Hi, parishioners. This is Mother Storm from St. James the Less here this week in my office. I'm going to do a little splicing of video because I have a graphic I want to show you. But this is week 8 of our Bible reading. Yesterday we gathered together and discussed Numbers 34 through Deuteronomy 18. Largely, we discussed the book of Deuteronomy, which is an extremely important book. We have a new author, a new voice, the D author who has distinctive themes and a distinctive style. So let me begin by showing you this graphic here. Okay, so now I'm in a different setting because I'm doing this a couple days later. I'm going to try to improve upon and tighten the version that I had before. So I'm putting up a drawing here. You can see what an incredible artist I am from this. I should have redone it, but I didn't. This is what I showed everyone on Sunday. So first, the book of Deuteronomy is a speech, some would call it a sermon, given by Moses on the plains of Moab, which is on the east side of the Jordan River. This is the second generation of people who left Egypt, and they're about to cross the Jordan and enter into the promised land. That won't be with Moses. Moses was punished by God. His punishment was not to be able to actually enter the promised land. His successor, Joshua, would lead the people there. But he wants to give everybody this grand summary of their wilderness experience before he dies. It's his final speech. So in the middle, there's Moses talking to this second generation, not the people who actually left Egypt, but their children, about the Sinai experience as if they were there, even though they weren't. Now, a bit later, several hundred years later, this book, when it first appears, written down by the D writer, it is read to the people of Israel. This would be like probably 7th century. And they are supposed to think of themselves as these people up at the base of Sinai receiving the law. So the quote at the top, which comes from Robert Alter, says that the people then and now are imagined as a continuous entity. They, even though they weren't actually there, are supposed to imagine themselves as having been there, receiving the law from God by way of their mediator, Moses. And that really very much governs Jewish thought to this day. You were there. You imagine yourself. The people then and now are imagined as a continuous entity. So some of the other things we talked about were themes in the book of Deuteronomy. But before even that, when we first shared our impressions, we were talking, once again, room full of Christians talking about the Old Testament, about how petty and sort of withholding and conditional with his love this God seems. And we talked about the extreme xenophobia and how disturbed we were by that, how everybody's told by God to go wipe everyone out, women and children in a place, absolutely wipe out all their idols. It's a very iconoclastic book. These are the themes in Deuteronomy that you see again and again. But the capriciousness of this God is very hard for us to swallow. And as I said, in the Jewish tradition, of course, they have so much interpretation, so many ways of having this discussion about how God is presented in Deuteronomy. For us, we just kind of dip into the Old Testament every now and then, and we don't have the really intellectual, emotional, spiritual, I think, equipment to do anything other than to say, oh my goodness, that's just such a vindictive, awful God. Let's go back to the New Testament. But that is not how a Jewish person would experience this book. And of course, they would look critically at the same things that we look critically at. It is brought up again and again, class after class. Let's get a rabbi in here and let's talk to him or her about all of this. So I'm on that. We'll probably do that in mid-January. Okay, other themes in the book of Deuteronomy. Fidelity to Yahweh, tied to retaining, holding on to the land. Remember, this book is first, after it's written down, being presented to people about to re-enter the land who've lost it already. And that can't happen again. So it won't happen according to the writer of Deuteronomy, or who puts these words in Moses' mouth, if you do what I say, right? Wilderness is a negative place. The writer of Deuteronomy looks back on the wilderness as a place of desolation, disobedience, grumbling. We'll see a kind of a different view later on when we get to some other books. The xenophobia, the iconoclasm, we talked about that. It's very exhortative. I loved this quote from Robert Alter. There is no biblical text more generous in its use of demonstrative pronouns than the book of Deuteronomy. Very preachy, exhortative, and also, and finally, because I think I'm out of time, this idea of Moses as the mediator becomes very solidified in the book of Deuteronomy. We've seen it, of course, in previous books, but the people and God are distinct from each other. They're distant from each other. The reason the book of Deuteronomy gives for that is that the people are afraid of God. You know, this is a God who announces himself in fire and thick darkness and cloud and smoke. So this distance from God, we discussed that for a while, and the need for Moses to stand between them is something that takes on a whole other level in meaning in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, so next week is Deuteronomy 19 through, Joshua, whatever, I'll email the end. I hope you can join us, 9:30. It's really, oh my gosh, our talks are so good. So if you can join us in the ISOM room, 9:45, we would love to see you. Be well. Thanks for watching.